Hello, welcome to part 2 of my cosplay crafting vlog for my Draka cosplay from World of Warcraft Shadowlands. I forgot to film an intro, so I'm doing that really quickly right now. If you missed the last video, I basically started this whole process. It's my first time making armor ever, and I got kind of the base of everything ready. So I'm just going to pick up from where I left off last time. This is week 2 of working on this cosplay. What are you doing? Chopper, why are you inside my armor? You're so silly. Little guy. You want some armor? You want me to build some kitty armor for you? I'll figure it out. I gotta start with sculpting more onto the gauntlets after last time. I have it sitting on my tripod here to dry so I don't squish anything on there. But I started doing details. Also, I was in my D&D session and I was sculpting while I was playing D&D because it helps me to do something with my hands to focus. So after the gauntlets, I moved on to the chest armor and started doing these kind of triangular shapes that she has going down the front part of her chest armor. I rolled my foam clay out into little snakes and then attached them and blended them out into the armor. Also, going back and forth between D&D Beyond while I was playing games. Here you can see a little bit more details as I'm putting it in, and a close-up of the triangular pieces. There's my D&D character. After they were all dried and cured the next day, I went back to the gauntlets to do the second layer on those. And just rolling things out, sculpting it, putting the kind of bone details that she has as the lining on her armor. Here I am going to the second gauntlet and showing more what I did on the first one because I forgot to record it earlier. But basically I just rolled out snakes again and did some lining, blending that out around the whole shape of it all, and then making some spikes that went onto the corners. Then I went on to one of the shoulder pieces, and again just some lining that's kind of bone looking on there. And just going around the whole thing. Then I sculpted out some spikes that she has coming out of the shoulder pieces on some of the corners and the center of it. And just building everything up. I guess there's not really much I can say about it. I'm just sculpting, I'm using the foam clay, building things on. Then I marked some places where some horns and spikes are going to come out of this one. Just kind of imprinting things. I moved back to the breastplate so I could fill in the seams with some of the foam clay and just make it more smooth so it was a little bit less messy on those lines where my glue wasn't the best. I think filling in the seams also made it a little bit more sturdy in those places too. Then I went to one of the under layers of her pauldron. That one also had some outer layers around it. And again, some little spikes in the corners, and then I didn't really have to make that line go all the way up to the top because it's covered by the other part anyways. Then back to my second gauntlet, putting the second layer of details on there. Just rolling out some little spikes Then we have the big shoulder piece. This one again has the bone border around the whole thing. So I started with just outlining everything, adding some ridges and spikes where they appeared in her reference photos. And then the same process on the neck armor. This piece will have a kind of diamond gem shape that goes in the center of the neck piece. So it just has these pieces that kind of outline it. I'm sculpting this over my bed because, I don't know, I just wanted to sit in this area of my room, having more space. But it probably wasn't the best idea because I did spill some of the foam clay and kind of rubbed it into my blanket a little bit, so there's a little bit of clay stain on my bed now. It's fine though. The back of the neck piece, I'm planning to have it attached closed with some Velcro. Then the hip armor, I'm just kind of carving some lines into for texture, and then trimming up some more pieces on the sides to make it closer to what she looks like. And kind of deepening the lines that I had in there too. Just want to make it look very textured and cool looking. I'm also doing some texture on the other layers that go on her shoulder pieces. They kind of look liney, ragged, and kind of like chipped and damaged on the bottom. These are the pieces that will go on for her belt. It's kind of layered pieces, and then the center piece up here has a big skull in the center, so this was really fun to sculpt out with the foam clay. I started with just a circle and then pressing in the indents and shapes and cheekbones, and like you can already see it looks somewhat skull-like already, and then I just had a lot of fun sculpting this scary, angry skull into the belt piece. Like, look at that. I love it. Then we moved on to the teeth. It had some regular teeth down there and then some big spiky fangs that came out of the sides. After doing the skull, look at that. I'm very proud of the skull. It was really fun to sculpt that. But after I finished that up, I moved on to the, again, outline border piece thing that's on basically all of these. Then I moved back to the large shoulder piece. This one also has a big skull on it. I kind of realized after I built this all up, this made this piece of the armor really heavy. So I probably should have put something under it and then sculpted this on top for just the outer details, but it's fine. It's not, I don't think it'll be too bad. I think with everything holding it all together, it should be okay. But another large, big, scary, angry skull. This one had some pointed teeth, and then those big indents will have large fangs that will come out of them later. But I was just kind of blocking out the base of this big, large skull. the skull will also have a kind of outer, almost helmet-like layer that goes around the top portion of it, so I didn't feel like it was necessary to sculpt out the entire top part of the skull too. I just wanted to block out the base of the face area. Here I am moving back to my EVA foam. This is the Yayahan EVA foam, and I'm cutting out pieces that I'll be using for some horns and different pieces that are going to stick off of this armor. I kind of didn't know what I was doing here. I didn't follow a pattern for the horns, I just made it up as I went. I cut out some paper and like taped it together and it seemed correct. So I'm just cutting out all the pieces that will be for the horns. The large ones here that I'm cutting are going to be on the heavier pauldron with the one with the skull on it. We'll have these coming out of the top too. Then I go back with my contact cement and I'm starting to glue all of the pieces back together and making them into the horn shapes. Then heating them so I can make them more bendy and moldable, and I used a hair tie to hold them in a curled shape. Then here they are, the horns were glued together, and then I just put a couple dots of glue to attach them onto the centers of the gauntlets. This pointy piece here is not for this project at all, that's for something else, but that'll be here eventually soon on my channel. And then the large horns, and that's as far as I got there. Then watching some Metalocalypse while I went back in with some more foam clay to fill in some more gaps that were on the horns and where the bottoms of the horns didn't necessarily come into contact with the gauntlet, just filling that in so they're flush together. Then I went back on the large pauldron because I forgot there was a little notch in the top, so I had to cut that out and redo that. Here I am putting the top border onto the hip armor. It's again like just more of that bony ridge stuff that's on there. This second batch of foam clay that I got actually ended up being partially dried out when it got to me, and I was struggling with it a lot. I was trying to just keep working with it. I thought maybe I was doing something wrong. I tried adding some water to it. I ended up sculpting some little bones and some spikes out of it that will be accessories that attach onto the armor. But the more detailed stuff that I was trying to do with it just wasn't working at all because this foam clay was partially dried out. The good news is I did talk to the seller, the store that makes this brand of foam clay, and they were super nice and really helpful, and they ended up replacing the bucket of foam clay for me. So I'm very appreciative of that. I think that's going to be a lot more helpful going forward, because here I am trying to add some bigger spikes onto the smaller pauldron and it just was not working. It was kind of a mess. With the way that this foam clay was partially dried, things weren't sticking together and things were really lumpy, and here I am realizing this just is not going to work out. So I just took it off because it wasn't even staying on and tried to mess with it a little bit, but no, it was not going to work. Here you can see how like weirdly lumpy and textured that was, especially compared to the other foam clay that I worked with earlier. And then the pieces that were a little bit smoother just totally lifted up off of the piece, like they didn't even attach to the foam because it was so dry. So since I had to wait for more foam clay, I ended up switching tasks to the things that didn't need any more sculpting and decided to prime it with the Plasti Dip spray. I did a few coats of this outside so it was nice and ventilated, moving them around, doing all the different parts, make sure I didn't miss anything, and just priming these pieces for painting. And that we'll get into next time. I did that on the gauntlets, the neck armor, and the chest armor. Okay, I'm back again. I realized the end of this video didn't really end. I didn't have a good ending spot. It just kind of stopped. But this has been week 2 of working on my cosplay. It felt like a lot of the same type of tasks, but I made a lot of progress, and I'm excited to move into week 3 of working on the cosplay. So stay tuned to next week to see the next video, next part of this whole process. See you then.